You know, the one thing I was just thinking, I've been reading Doug McCoch's books on, you know, the whole work with SETI and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And one of the things that has struck me is how much it has grown, because, I mean, work like, for example, that Brian has done, which shows that the universe is larger than anyone imagined. And also the percentages of people who recognize that there's probably life beyond, there could be a species beyond. And I was curious in your reaction as the human begins to diminish. Is it because of the vastness of the possibilities that exist outside this planet?
I think that would be part of it. In a sense, both as we on this planet, we've seen new. There's been new recognition of forms of intelligence in other animal species, for example, or in plants and so forth, in the Earth's self-regulation and in the Gaia hypothesis and so forth. But certainly the discovery, this is John Mack's point, you know how Freud said there's three big wounding blows to man's naive self-love: the Copernican revolution, the Darwinian, and the psychoanalytic, which reveals that even the ego is not the master of its own house, the psyche. Each of those dethrones it. But John Mack said the encounter with extraterrestrial intelligence, should it be confirmed, which John felt it had been, through the many clinical experiences that he had with people who claimed those experiences. He said this will be the fourth wounding blow. So there is something to that. I would also like to say, I think that part of what drives SETI, though, is a profound sense of that there is something more, but looking for it in the only way that they know how to look for it, which is like through radio signals or something like that, rather than perhaps opening new epistemologies that recognize the profound intelligence that is already around us in the cosmos and in nature beyond the human.
Well, Robert, really, you got
You have it, Brian. Go for it. I'm your fan.
The second oldest person in the room. To the
Let me get you started, okay? Let me get you started with something from Steiner.
When he wins, I hate it.
No, Robert, come on.
I should be used to it, however.
Okay, so if I were to lead into something with the, in fact, I think I may have to do this with Brian just to get him to talk. But so I'll lead in with something with you. Your perspective as our esteemed both President Emeritus, but also Chair of the PCC program, your perspective has been so inspired by and informed by Rudolf Steiner's, and before that many others like Aurobindo and all the American pragmatists and so forth. But clearly Steiner has in some sense captured the flag of your allegiance and inspires you as Steiner inspires many of us, but clearly in a very central way in your case. And Steiner seems to carry, as well as almost anybody I know, a capacity to recognize simultaneously the importance of humbling the overproud human being, recognizing the soul of the whole, but at the same time he carries a certain noble anthropocentrism that he wants to hold in which is something I was also trying to do, that where you could have a kind of humbled anthropocentrism where the cosmos, this is something that Brian carries in his work, the cosmos is expressing itself as cosmos in the human being in a particular way. But what Steiner also carries is a profound sense of simultaneous loss and gain all the way through the evolutionary process in a way that I think is very balanced and holds that in a way, that tragic sense that I think is important to have in any contextualizing of a larger narrative. So I see that so much in Steiner, and I sense that that's something that you share.
Yes, and I completely agree with what you said, and you should just keep going. So yeah,
use your mic. Use your mic.
Oh, sorry. It was a wonderful talk, the result of deep thinking and just as you were saying, with you're attributing to Steiner, but it's true of you. I think quite an artful combination of huge deep thinking with a humble caution. And the humble caution comes as a result of your recognizing how great predecessors did not get it all right. And you're fully expecting that and emphasizing the way in which we're in a process where collectively we are contributing to an understanding which is, as you often say, deeper than we than comes from our own unique. It does come from our unique understanding, but it couldn't be done by our own unique effort.
Deeper than day can comprehend.
Exactly, deeper than day can comprehend. And what I really enjoyed, I just enjoyed it so much, I can hardly talk about it, but what I kept seeing and recognizing and delighting in is the many ways in which you reconciled opposites. It's Cusa, and it's so many great thinkers that we all love in PCC, beginning with Plato, after all.
Or even Heraclitus, even in that regard.
Starting earlier, right. And the one that I would like to sort of emphasize and either draw you out or draw someone out has to do with emptying in order to fill. So, like you mentioned Steiner, one of the parts of Steiner that I don't find in others, so many parts I do find, but that is one part particularly that I do not find, is the emphasis on the hierarchies. He talks about them as planets, as planets, but it's also they're really like gods. They're spiritual beings who empty themselves, and that to me is the sort of the paradigm or the characteristic of this process that you're describing so eloquently and beautifully, namely that each advance, in addition to having a shadow, also has a sacrifice that made it possible. And we are now both sacrificing ourselves and our world and our home, our earth, foolishly, and also in some complicated way, in a process, I think, that has something to do with discovery and growth and purification and initiation. And I don't understand that very well, and I'm very nervous about making it facile. But I do think that we are part of several times when you were talking about the advance and the loss, which we now retrospectively can understand, but was not understood at the time. I think your work is so important because I think you're one of the people who sees the great gain and loss at the present time and how to work with them. And so the idea of your introducing light, both sun and moon, day and night, as the redeeming symbols of our time, I think is quite wonderful because the great philosophies, sciences, religions, and arts have that running through, and also has the loss and the gain at core. It's burning. So it's illuminating, it's warming, and it's also burning. So it's a really great symbol, and I think it's true, and what you're doing with it is tremendously important. So I'm just, like everyone here, I'm just really grateful for your work and urging you on.
Thank you. No, you can. I'm thinking, first of all, the uncertainty. That seems so crucial to acknowledge. That's partly why I put the question mark here. You know, compared to that certainty of knowledge and of the robust modern mind and modern worldview, or the certainty of the like the biblical revelation or the Platonic revelation, etc. And now we have this profound sense of uncertainty in so many ways, including our future as a species, and that uncertainty seems to be a crucial part of any initiatory process. You can't have a certain positive outcome. Like you can't have a pretend near-death experience. It's just not going to have the moral, psychological consequence or impact. We have to basically have the grip of radical uncertainty, which certainly this time has put us through. You also, let's see, you brought up the gain and the loss. I should write down things when you're talking because they're went in and out. It'll come back. Oh, thank you. That's so great. That was exactly it. See, we so depend on, like a room like this is a field, and a lot of the stuff I'm saying is like basically in the field, which you guys are producing, and I'm saying it, but and then I'm picking up things all like that aren't being spoken and that are coming in through the eyes, and you're thinking anyway. Thank you. That was perfect. So the crucial thing about the sacrifice, and there's a term which Jake could share a lot about particularly in Christian theology, called kenosis, the great Greek term of basically the self-emptying of the divine that is a crucial part of the incarnational process. I mean, this solar journey is an incarnational process. A lot of what's been going on in that diminishment and dethronement is a deep entrance into matter, into body, into history, into the immanent. Away from that, after the transcendent gave us that profound identity and luminosity and aspirations for ethical and spiritual universalism, we also this process of going down here is an emptying of that divine privilege, in a sense, that we carried into the modern birth, not in utter nakedness were we born in the Renaissance, but trailing clouds of glory. There's luminosity all around us, which Leonardo and Michelangelo and Raphael were painting and sculpting, and Copernicus and Kepler and Shakespeare were experiencing and authoring, and etc. It affected, but that the hubris and inflation that comes from the solar identification, it's like we weren't just, see, Kepler's still participating in the divine logos. But what happens in the subsequent period is that we became the divine logos, and God died, or a divine milieu faded. I believe not accidentally. I think was not only our inflation, it was also perhaps a withdrawing of the archetypal and spiritual dimension to allow a more robust empowerment of self, in the same way that a little baby, the mother moves away so that the baby can go around and then looks back. But the baby needs to have a sense of its own, or the child in its growing independence. So this is the kenosis of that emptying of, my God, why hast thou forsaken me, of 20th century history, which the Jews carried above all, but so many others as well. Jake.
Rick, it's been wonderful tonight. Thank you so much. I kept thinking, probably because of what we've been talking about in our classes lately, my mind kept going back to Coleridge a lot as you were speaking. And I know you've thought about this as well, and I wonder if maybe I could draw you out on some of that, because looking at the pictures, and especially with the I am up there, and the sort of Cartesian, the Copernican ego, and then the Cartesian and eventually sort of Foucauldian face on the sand that's about to be washed away by the seashore. I had
Insignificant.
Yeah, right, exactly. I had in mind Coleridge, and not just both Coleridge's theories and the sort of ideas that he was giving expression to for the Romantics. Thinking about the I am, Coleridge, his wonderful description of the imagination that we humans don't own, but we participate in. The I am, the infinite act of creation in the eternal I am being repeated in the primary imagination of the human being, and the secondary imagination, which allows us to actually create our own imaginal worlds. But I was especially thinking of, we've been reading some poems like Frost at Midnight, which is an entirely lunar poem, right? It's all about the moon and the light of the moon shining, and the way that that leads Coleridge to begin to explore the way that there's a kind of, the imagination has a way of shining like the moon upon the world to elicit a face from the world that's capable of speaking far differently than the solar ego is capable of speaking. Or again, we also read The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, in which the sun begins as something wonderful as the mariner sets out, and as soon as that just impossible act of killing for no reason at all, right, the albatross, suddenly the sun becomes this oppressive, menacing presence. And the whole scene turns into a world very, very much like the one on the bottom there, a world of death, where the mariner alone exists as a living being, surrounded by kind of zombies and corpses, and all meaning evaporates. Everything becomes ugly. He's incapable of praying. And the only thing that remains positive throughout that whole thing is the moon. The moon is always a positive presence, and it's finally under moonlight, the moonlight shining on these sea snakes that glimmer like silver, and he's able to, in a single moment, bless them. And that's when his curse begins to be broken, and he moves into a new world of a different kind of experience of the world, and it ends with him actually walking up a hillside, compelled to tell his story again and again, but also moving towards a wedding. So,
and that's and it's carrying, like Wordsworth, his fellow romantic, is carrying the light of common day motif, and with Wordsworth, we're born with the star, and the numinous light is all around us at dawn. But then, as we mature, the sun disenchants the world. We see everything through the light of common day, and he has this profound sense of loss, that the mystery of being has somehow faded from his vision that he could feel so intensely when he was a child. Coleridge has put it into this even more explicit solar and lunar form, and the moon seems to be like the symbol of what it allows us to see, the more mysterious relationship between dark and light. Also, things are like between sleep and dreams and our waking life. While the sun shines, illuminates the sharply differentiated being. This is all the sun in our artificial mode here. And something Heidegger points out is that, with our total, the cities all night, the lights and everything, with us not being able to see the stars and the night sky. Heidegger has a phrase, something like, we've kind of like condemned ourselves to eternal day and harassed unrest. Like that's some of the, and that's such a romanticism as you're describing it is, see, that's what's, romanticism comes out of this moment as a kind of countervailing recovery of the soul deep in there that the Cartesian imagination eclipsed. And Romanticism has that capacity. It's always held the sort of solar and lunar in a balance, the individual heroic quest, and at the same time the holding of the whole, the mystery, the ambiguity, the paradox, the poetic dimension of life. I'm so glad you're teaching all the things you're teaching, Jake. It's a tremendous enrichment in our school.
Rick, I just loved all of it so much. It was just so powerful. And in a way, I had a couple questions just to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, because the beginning was really coming right out of your, I thought you might actually have some good refinements and corrections of stuff I was saying there.
That would be a projection. I had none whatsoever. But I actually just, almost as a way of sort of remembering what you said, so we can carry it with us. And also to go back to the idea of that you're providing a narrative. And so I wanted to maybe just dwell on that by looking at the paradoxes. Maybe you could just give us what you're thinking in terms of what's the story that explains these paradoxes. Okay, so the first one was, why is it the most intellectually confident mindset of history is so absorbed in a metaphysical takedown of the human? So what is the story there? And the way I wanted to do it was, I'm trying to give
please.
Rick's answer. All right, in other words, this is what I think I learned, is that take the scientific enterprise. Now, so this from a deep psychological point of view, I think it is that we had to so destroy our sense of transcendent superiority. We just had to so destroy that in order for something to happen. Now, the way in which I think you would talk about it would be with the sun and the moon, which I loved, all of that, but the way I would talk about it, I'm just curious if this would be any different whatsoever, would be that so we, scientific mentality types, had to tear it apart so that Earth could actually enter into a new era.
Yeah, that I very much agree. That's why I think there's religious intensity that the scientific sensibility has been pursuing the de-anthropocentric project, because it has a spiritual significance. We have to. It's a vast compensation for the inflation of the necessary, to some extent, inflation of the robust summum bonum modern self, Cartesian ego, rational ego.
But I want to put that inflation in terms of a larger mythos.
Yeah.
Right. And so that would be Earth's development, let's say. Right? Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Right. The entire universal evolution is the big picture, and so then this one star, out of the many stars, the Homo sapiens species, brilliantly shines out its light, and it's the only sun around as far as it is concerned. And but then it has to. it has to go down. Like our civilization is all about progress and ascent and upward and outward and heroic conquest. And it doesn't get that the deeper heroic, the completion of the heroic trajectory is a descent, because the sun has to go down. It has to go down into the lunar ground, into the night sky.
Okay, but all of that could actually be understood in the context of we're going to return then to a primal state. But you're not saying that. You're saying that actually, as we go down with a different kind of consciousness, enabling something new to take place.
Right.
So I'm just saying, in the context then of the Earth, so then this whole
Yeah,
journey
I
then
see what
can
you're
be
saying.
understood
Yeah.
as a way in which the Earth story can actually enter into a new era. I mean, are you happy with that?
Absolutely, and this links with Sean's work of basically of complex holism. That namely, this is a holism that honors the autonomy of the parts, and that the part in its flourishing, in this case the sun, the sun carries the whole cosmos in it, right? I mean, each of us has the whole. We are each of us a cosmic microcosm. And our flourishing, including our autonomy, and this is what Romantics brought in with the creative imagination being authentically original in each person, brings something new into the universe. And so it's not just a return to this, but something has been forged by this process, but a kind of sacrifice or cleansing and a transfiguration has to take place for us to be able to have a new dawn.
No, I'm with you all the way. But I guess what I'm trying to do, going to the second point, you'll see what my point
Okay.
is. That's great. So here's the second paradox you bring up is, why does this process with the scientists destroying the anthropocentrism, why does it appear to be even more anthropocentric? And so then, what you would be happy saying, what I'd be happy saying, what I think a lot of us in PCC would be happy saying is that we have an insight as to why they are doing that they do not have. I mean, so we're making this bold claim. We understand
that in this case being
would be the intellectuals and the scientists who are tearing apart any meaning of the universe.
okay.
So
Yes.
so that I'm picking up on what you're saying. Is
okay,
that, so that we're making this bold statement that they are unaware that they are actually serving the Earth story
Right.
in their relentless attack on human superiority.
Yes, that's exactly right, and so that it is it's a kind of unconscious service of a larger archetypal process, and it's what Hegel would call the cunning of reason, or cunning of Geist, not a disenchanted reason, but like the divine meta narrative encourages egos to think that they're doing their own thing selfishly, but meanwhile, other things are being served.
So we've out-contextualized them.
Yeah, but we can be sure we'll be out contextualized.
In other words, the birds are going to fly.
The birds are going to fly farther.
They're going to fly
yes.
farther.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just trying to say that we are making this statement.
Yes.
That we understand what's going on in a way that they don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think where your work meets the scientific, the more skeptical part of the scientific community, that as it tries to grapple with you and Thomas Berry and so forth, is I think you assert a kind of the possibility of the universe carrying a metastructure in which the good is intrinsic to the universe, that there is a moral dimension to the cosmos. And the mainstream scientific perspective has alienated any moral considerations out of the intrinsic cosmos. So in certain ways, you hearken back to a Platonic, what Charles Taylor would call the ontic logos, that being itself is carrying being itself is carrying divine intelligence and good, or when Martin Luther King brings in that, that the moral arc, that the universe bends towards justice, that there's a moral arc in our history, in the cosmos itself. These are statements that a Stephen Jay Gould would not, or let alone Dawkins, affirm. But you do affirm, and you have a, you even talk about human destiny in a way that that puts you in the camp of those who are seeing an epic meta-narrative unfolding through our moment in history.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we share a similar vision.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Rick, I just wanted to, maybe you can...
Did you have the third
Well,
thing?
the
Or?
third thing, I think well,
Okay.
just to say it, because you brought it up, because so people can bring it home, why the modern self, which is so precious to us, has botched up the Earth's process. So in the in the mythos that you're bringing to our awareness, how would you...
Yeah.
Why has it?
Well, I think whenever the part claims more importance than the whole, then a tyranny happens that is very destructive, and so there's going to be this tremendous, compensatory reaction that will take that down. I think well, I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah, but I guess I always want to put it in the context of cosmic evolution.
Yeah.
And so that the part took on this huge sense of itself, right? But through that, it could arrive at an understanding that could enable it to deconstruct that sense of superiority,
yes,
while sinking into a new intimacy with the vastness.
That's good. Thank you. I mean, the forging of a self is fraught with tremendous shadow potential, but it also makes possible authentic relationship. And
we really couldn't have this kind of relationship, not this kind of past, no.
Including the choice of whether to love or not. Like there's a certain, a certain form of consciousness is already so embedded in an ensouled nature that the question of whether to act through use one's empathic imagination to give a potential reality greater substance, like a meaningful worldview, for example. That takes an act of courage to assert, as we do in PCC and at CIS, this community asserts a kind of heroic worldview in a larger civilizational context that negates the possibility that there are such, that there could be such a worldview. And to do that, you have to have been in you have to have been in the wasteland in order to come back into the garden, and through an act of love and sacrifice, enter back into the garden. And I think this idea of the sacrifice that Robert brought up is, when we think about what's going to make a difference in the future, what's going to, we're all working so hard in each of our different ways to try to save the world or make, to help things move in a more life-enhancing, sustainable direction, et cetera. What's going to do it? And if we look in history, it seems that where worldviews shift, a big sacrifice took place. If you take, for example, our civilization comes particularly out of Israel and Greece, but then particularly the crucial moments are Socrates, in coming out of Greece, it's Socrates, and coming out of Israel, and then Judaism and then Christianity, the sacrifice of Jesus. there's a profound sacrifice whereby Athens condemns and executes Socrates. The Roman Empire condemns and executes Jesus. And as I think Vogelin said, the Athenians condemned Socrates, and in doing so, the gods condemned the Athenians. And the same thing with, and then it happened again with Galileo. That's the birth of the Greeks, Greek philosophy and noesis. That's the birth of Christianity with a great judgment and sacrifice. And then with Galileo, the church condemns Galileo, and in doing so, the universe, in some sense, condemns the church. The church loses its moral and intellectual authority in a certain profound way from that moment on. Well, some kind of deep sacrifice is going to need to happen. It's already happening in some respects, certainly, but it seems like there'll be an archetypal sacrifice that's still, and it could be like a judgment and a death, and then and a longer-term awakening that comes out of it. That's my sense of how. I mean, Martin Luther King and many others. Yeah. Okay. Who? Please, Jessica.
Thank you so much. My question is kind of a practical, embodied one in relation to taking this macrocosm layout that you've presented at the end of the talk and applying it to the microcosm of our own lives. And since many of us in this room are heroic revolutionaries, or at least hope to be so, and since it seems that ourselves are the greatest vessels of change, I'm curious, is it fair to say that each individual person needs to go through this initiatory descent in their own time? And if so, what might that look like? How might one go about doing that? And if you find yourself there, what can you do in that space to help birth whatever is coming in this time of great uncertainty?
Oh, thanks for bringing it back home. We started off with Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan. That's the name of the Dylan album, Bring It All Back Home. Your point, I think you're gesturing to this deep mystery of how, something Chris Beisch has written beautifully about how each of our own kind of descent and initiatory process is in some sense carrying the whole. It's not only, okay, we need to do our inner journey work, etc., in order to get out there and do good work out here. It's in the actual interior, silent, psycho-spiritual journey of descent that each of us does as an individual that often feels so overwhelming in its intensity and scariness and suffering that it seems to transcend what an individual human either can explain from their own biography as being like what we're working out, and also more than it feels like we can manage. And I think it's quite possible, as Beisch has suggested, is that the whole, in some sense, I would put it as like the whole Earth community is in some sense using each of us as individuals to go through this initiatory transformation as each of us is on the couch or in the doing it. The universe is at that very moment, and the Earth is at that very moment going through the death rebirth process through us. And nothing that any of us is doing as an individual, even in the most private, cave or therapy room, is truly isolated or private. Everything is affecting the whole, as the whole is incarnating itself through us. You really get that in Rilke very strongly, because inside human beings is where God learns. Thanks. I hope that's a little bit in that direction. Please, Matt.
So you mentioned Galileo, who kind of got it easy in comparison to another scientist, Giordano Bruno, who was burnt at the stake. And I bring up Bruno because he seems to have taken Copernicus's discovery that the sun is at the center of our solar system, and then realized that, oh, all of those stars, those are other solar systems. Maybe they have intelligent life on one of their planets or some of their planets. And I think it was that idea, actually, that got him in trouble with the church, that there could be other planets with intelligence on them, and that the human being wasn't the only intelligent creature in the universe. And I think what he was sort of getting to was this notion of infinity. And for the ancients, infinity was terrifying because they called it the unlimited, the apeiron, and that meant chaos and disorder. And in this post-Copernican transition, it seems like what Bruno was trying to realize is the intelligence of the infinite. And that if we live in an infinite universe, as there's I think it's a Hermetic aphorism that Jung repeats, and
I think it's from Nicholas of Cusa. Yeah, I think so.
The universe is an infinite sphere whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is everywhere.
Right.
And this re-enchantment that we're trying to rediscover is, or the enchantment that we're trying to rediscover is, I think, and that's similar to that aphorism, that the human is no longer at the unique center, but that we represent one of an infinite,
right.
array of other intelligent centers.
Of other unique centers.
Right. And that if you can grasp the meaning of infinity, or at least experience it as a sort of, you can't necessarily understand it conceptually, but you can feel it, you can experience it, then that allows us to live in a universe that isn't centered on us, but is nonetheless intelligent, that has centers of meaning everywhere.
I think one could even say that it is centered on us. It's just not centered only on us.
Only on us.
Just as it's centered on each individual here, and we're all sort of heroes of our own epic and tragedy and romance, etc. So also, the Earth seems to be a true center of cosmic meaning, but it's not the absolute fixed, unmoving center. Mm-hmm. And so, in a way, the Copernican revolution was the crucial moment in moving us out of the womb. I mean, that was the move. That was that was us moving into the birth process. Like the baby starts to move in the womb, and the church at first goes, "Oh no, man, you're going to lose the whole, the whole metastructure of being." Who knows what's out there? There is no out there, etc. And but the Copernican revolutionaries were driven by something that was bigger. I'm so glad you brought up Bruno. He dies in 1600. He's burned at the stake, and Galileo's one of the reasons he was in such trouble with the church was because Giordano had made it more dangerous to be a Copernican, because he had connected Copernicanism to, not only infinity and the Thomas Digges universe of, that Digges, that was the first one, image of the many, not just the sun being the center, but many, many stars in infinity. But he also, as I understand it, he also, combination of personality as he had with, as true with Galileo, that got him in trouble, and also some theological issues that he was not a martyr for science in a certain way. That's the only reason that I was going to Galileo, but in a way they represent together a kind of conjoint sacrifice, and they're one right after the other there in Italy. And I think you're really capturing accurately that the recognition. This gets to the heart of the talk tonight about anthropocentrism. Can we be anthropocentric but also cosmocentric? Like honor the human as having its own authentic, being a noble center of cosmic meaning and even cosmic being through us. At the same time, recognizing we're just part of our genius, our quest is the universe's genius and the universe's quest, which takes many other noble forms, like the tiger and the bacteria and the mountain. Well, I think we're. Oh, please.
I try not to be the person who has the event end and then add something, but I'm going to do it.
You deserve it.
I said, should I do this? And I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. So having you are the founder of our program, and this is a very PCC night. It seems to be quite a special one. You're the founder of our program, the author of two of our major works that you give courses that are absolutely central to our endeavor together. And we're talking about experiencing the sacrifice of being a contemporary person and some opposition, in a certain sense. At the same time, having a romantic vision of possibilities. I thought at some point, I don't want to end it, but I do before the end of the night is over, I wish you would take an opportunity to just say a little bit about how PCC is doing in terms of the vision and the sort of existential dimension, the existential urgency and deep transformative possibility of what you're talking about tonight.
The existence of the PCC program and the way that it's unexpectedly, to me, flourished. I think we felt we were doing something worthwhile in 1993, 94 when we were putting it together. But it has succeeded way beyond our dreams. I mean, in terms of particularly the quality of the students and the community, and we are all students forever, and the fact that we faculty keep learning so much from the students, and the students have, in some sense, I think that's the crucial quality of a life-enhancing, heroic community. That is a community that holds a kind of heroic stance with respect to a higher vision that is not being held and is maybe even negated by the mainstream culture. I'm using that word heroic from Charles Taylor and his sense of that from the Hebrew prophets and Platonic philosophers on, we get a sense that that's the heroic. The individual, we can't do it as individuals. We need communities. And I know one thing that has made an enormous difference in my being able to carry a vision that is so divergent from the mainstream is that I can discuss it with and correct it within and evolve it within a community of people whom I have such high regard for. And there's also, it's a combination of eros and logos, because there's a heartful quality of support that gets back to Jessica's point, which is, I think, a community works when it simultaneously can kind of enclose and protect what is delicate in its development and evolution, at the same time, maintain a kind of permeable communication with the larger whole of the culture, and not get into a cult, basically, but to have that constant dialogue with the whole, with the larger whole outside of us, and at the same time interior to the community, that while there is this nourishing of a set of perspectives around which there can be a fair amount of kind of heartful consent, at the same time that there's this nurturing of real individual difference, with every single person being given the we're holding space for each individual to go through this process because we need all these individuals doing it. And that's PCC, I think, for me anyway, and I'd be happy to hear what like Brian or any students might have to say, just has been for me a thrilling community to live in, to share and learn from, and it takes it's really shocked me. It's just been a great blessing past what I could have imagined. Brian, do you have any thought?
Beautiful. I completely agree.
So.
Completely agree.
Okay, well, let's call it a night. I really appreciate your just coming here on this incredible rainy night was an act of love, as Brian put it, for all of us. I thought, God, I thought maybe 5 people could come to this. So you're very kind to come, and just keep in mind that just as the sun has to die into the night is pregnant with each new day and with each new dawn of a new star, and I think we're carrying that larger journey forward. Okay, thanks.